I'm a psychologist, and I'm going to explain to you one of the most important things you need to understand about your own psychology and your own self-improvement journey, your own growth journey. And once you understand this, I really think it'll change everything. So when we are in a self-improvement journey, when we're trying to create habit change, when we're just trying to do better, when we're trying to strive towards a new goal, trying to be a better person, whatever, what happens is that we have a pendulum effect. So a pendulum swings back and forth, right? And so when we're trying to create some type of habit change, what often happens is that we'll overcompensate the other way. So maybe we're trying to speak up more at work. Maybe we have people-pleasing tendencies, and we're like, okay, people-pleasing is on this side of the pendulum. Like, I have been keeping quiet way too long, and, it would be good for me to speak up. This is important. Like, I identify this in myself. This is kind of a growth edge for me. And so we have people pleasing. And then what often happens is we speak up, but we've had so much pent up frustration that we almost overdo it. We erupt, or we overtalk, or we just, we do it in an angry way. It's too much. So essentially we have people pleasing, and here we have essentially eruption. They're kind of opposite ends of the spectrum, in which here we're kind of oversharing in a very aggressive way, and here we're completely people pleasing. And the reason that this happens is because we just don't have enough practice kind of establishing a middle. So what will happen is, because I've spent so much time people pleasing, I will completely go to the other side, because the mind almost needs to be able to test the limits of the spectrum before it finds a healthy middle. And a lot of times the saddest thing I see is that when somebody spent their whole life people pleasing, and then they try to speak up and they overdo it, or they do it poorly, or they do it in an aggressive way, then they create the story that, oh, I shouldn't have tried that, because see what happens if I don't people please? And basically they create this logic where it's oh, I'm people pleasing because if I try to do it the other way, I do it wrong, I do it bad, I do it in a harmful way. And they think that that is good logic for keeping with the people pleasing, staying as a people pleaser, because they're if I ever do it this way, then it's really dangerous, and that's why I need to stay in this end of the spectrum, in this safe zone. I need to hide, I need to people please. And that's completely wrong. You're using circular logic. What actually is happening is that you just haven't had practice speaking up. And it's kind of like riding a bike. Sometimes, you're riding a bike and maybe you're going down a hill and you don't know how to use the brakes. So you just you go too fast. That's exactly what's happening here. It's you haven't learned how to use the brakes in speaking up yet. So you kind of overdid it and you crashed into a bush. But what you do is you get back on the bike again and you try again. Maybe you practice using the pedals. And this actually takes a while to establish. This pendulum that you basically kept over here, then swung over here, you need to keep practicing. So each time you need to tell yourself, okay, what did I learn from that? What did I learn from, speaking up at that point and then having kind of an outcome that was not desirable? Maybe I learned that I should try speaking up earlier, before my frustration really builds. And maybe I need to kind of detect the clues of my frustration earlier. Maybe I'm going to practice that. And this is a journey. We're always kind of shifting. There's always a little bit of wiggle room in this kind of spectrum, right? And it will never necessarily be something you completely arrive at. There's always going to be a little bit of a shift back and forth. But if you keep practicing it, and if you kind of stay curious, you stay open, and you realize you're not doing anything wrong, this is exactly what should be happening, then you're going to get to that beautiful middle where you're really integrated, where your kind of desire to appease people comes to the front when it needs to, when it's helpful to you. And then your desire to speak your mind knows to come to the front when it needs to. And that's when you're making really, really good decisions. And you're not just kind of stuck in this rigidity of only having like one tool in your toolbox. Because being able to appease people is a tool, and speaking your mind is a tool. But the problem is that you're so rigid, you're not able to pick up the tools when they're needed because you just haven't practiced. You don't allow yourself to practice because you get so scared that you're doing it wrong, and you only stay on one side.